All right, let's go over the relationship between fractions and decimals. So, one thing that is quite easy is converting decimals to fractions. So, let me just give you an example. We could say this is 0.4, you could call it, but the proper name is 4/10. Okay? So when we are doing a decimal, we have, let's just say, okay, so this is the ones column, okay, of a regular number. The decimal goes after the ones column, and this first one would be tenths, okay? The first number would be tenths. The second number after the decimal is hundredths. The third number after the decimal is thousandths, and then we would get into 10,000s, 100,000s, millionths. But really, we would just focus on the tenths, hundredths, and thousandths. Okay? So, right here, this is 4/10. And to convert that into a fraction is literally, it's called the same exact thing. 4/10. Right? So as long as you know how to name a decimal properly, the fraction is called exactly the same thing. So 4/10 as a decimal equals 4/10 as a fraction. Now let's go over some other ones. Now if I did this, colloquially, a lot of people say 0.04 or 0.04. But this, since the 4 is in the hundredth spot, this is equal to 4 hundredths, which would then be 4 over 100. Okay? 4 hundredths. It's the same exact thing, same exact number, fraction and decimal. And I know that the 4 now is in the thousands place, so this equals 4 over 1,000, or 4 thousandths equals 4 thousandths as a fraction. Now, these fractions are not reduced the way that you would want them to. And what I mean by reduced is that they are basically the lowest numbers they can be as equivalent fractions. Now, I know that these are not reduced because you can divide each of these, both numerator and denominator, by the same number. So in this case, I can divide 4, okay, over 10. I know that anytime you see both numerator and denominator are even, you can immediately divide by 2 as a first step. You might be able to divide by larger numbers, but you always know that it's not in its proper form or its reduced form if if both numerator and denominator are even. So if I divide both top and bottom by 2, it becomes 2/5. Okay? So 4 divided by 2 is 2, 10 divided by 2 is 5. Now, I know that I could do the same thing with this one and divide by 2, and I would get 2/50. And again, they're both even, and I would get 1/25. Or I could just skip a step, and I know that 4 goes right into 100, and I know 4 goes into 100 25 times, so 4 divided by 4 would be 1, and 100 divided by 4 is 25. Now for 4 into 1000, if 4 goes into 100 25 times, then 4 goes into 1000 250 times, right? Or I could divide by 2, get 2 over 500, which would then, I would split each of these in half, divide by 2 again, which would be 1 over 250, okay? Or 1/250th, okay? But decimals, in particular, it's not exactly easy to put 1/250th into decimal form like it is to put a decimal into a fraction form, okay? Because for you to put a decimal into a fraction form, the denominator, or I'm sorry, a fraction into a decimal form, just easily, the denominator has to be a power of 10. Okay? So in this case, so I'm thinking 10, 100, 1000, 10,000, 100,000, right? Because it has to just be one of the place values, basically. Okay, so hopefully that cleared some things up. I could go over in a future video probably converting the other way from fractions into decimals, but that might be a little complex. So this is just a good rundown of how decimals and fractions are related.